What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Fairweather Fan Podcast. Today, as the headline suggests, I'm going to be talking about a few topics, particularly with the Philadelphia Phillies. Should Odubel Herrera be forgiven for the domestic violence incident? And then the other thing I'm going to be touching on a bit later is, should Noah Gragson be suspended from the NASCAR Xfinity Series for a couple of weeks, or at least one race? So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but just first of all, I know that the following on this platform has been kind of minimal to start off. This is kind of what I expected because I didn't want to promote this on any of my personal social media platforms. I'm not like ashamed of anything. I just wanted to try to build something from the ground up. I've built previous pages both professionally and recreationally for social media, and I've always had help along the way, or I've tried to shout them out on my personal social media account. So I wanted to try something a bit different with this one by not promoting it and only really getting the followers from the posts that I make on that platform. And so I follow myself on all the platforms. I subscribe to the YouTube channel because I want to make sure that all the videos are coming out, and I want to see when the videos are coming out because I can see that if I'm subscribed to it. And then I also follow my own page on Instagram and Twitter. So yeah, and that's kind of just like the base for me. So that way I can see, if I'm getting a following or anything. And I have 2 followers last I checked on Twitter now, so I got my first follower on Twitter for this platform on March 18th. And so it's going to take a while to get more, but I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying to build up this page to produce content on a weekly basis at least. And so I'm not frustrated. If I were frustrated, I'd be advertising this page everywhere that I could and trying to get more followers. But I think that it's just going to take time. It's going to take a lot of work to try to build this page up, try to get people to subscribe and follow and find a reason to be engaged with my platform, even if it's just liking posts or comments. I just had at least 11 people like a NASCAR tweet that I just made. So yeah, I'm going to keep trying to build it up, and I'm not frustrated with the low following right now. I'm just going to keep on producing content and hoping that people will continue to follow along the way. And even if they don't, at least I still have a platform for all this. And I'm really enjoying using the Twitter account to basically, on some instances, be a Twitter troll, and in other instances, just to express my belief on what should happen with a given situation, such as the Noah Gragson situation, which I will be talking about later. But anyway, let's get to our first topic. Odubel Herrera and the Philadelphia Phillies. Should Odubel Herrera be forgiven for the domestic violence act that he committed in 2019? And so, on this page, I don't want to dive too much into social issues or things that happen outside of sports, but I feel like this is a pretty important topic, especially because Odubel Herrera might be he might be in the starting lineup, or if not in the starting lineup, he might be on the 25-man roster. He might be in Philadelphia, or is the opening series in Philadelphia? I haven't even looked. But he might be an option for the Phillies to go to on opening day. So that's why I feel like this is a really important issue. But like I said, I don't want to dive too much into social issues on this page because as a Democrat, my opinion often differs from that of other sports fans who are traditionally Republican. So I don't want to get into too many issues that are partisan to one side. A lot of other platforms I feel like make a big thing about, the social justice issues, and how, sports are going about promoting them. And so I don't want to talk too much about those. I have other platforms to do that. So this issue, though, it's not really a political issue, but it is definitely, an issue of something that goes outside of the sport. And so what I say to the question, should Odubel Herrera be forgiven, is no. A lot of the main argument is that Odubel Herrera has changed as a person. That in the past 2 years, he's gone to counseling, and he's become a better person as a result. And from what I've seen, apparently his girlfriend forgives him for the incident. But I don't. I don't think he should be forgiven by the public. Because, there is, obviously, domestic violence is a big issue. But also just in terms of his reaction. And let me explain kind of the ideal reaction. And you're about to find out that this podcast is going to be very much heavily concentrated on NASCAR. Because here's my comparison to the Odubel Herrera situation. Kyle Larson said the N-word on a live stream. And before we even get deeper than that, let's just kind of take a moment to compare the two things side by side. Saying a racial slur, committing domestic violence. There is a substantial difference to those things. Because while Larson may have hurt people with his words, Odubel Herrera physically hurt somebody, committed a crime, something that is against the law. And I'm not saying that saying the N-word is good by any stretch, or any racial slur. I'm not saying that that's good. I'm saying actions speak louder than words. But anyway, even if you want to ignore that, just look at the reaction, both of the reactions to the situation. At first, I thought Kyle Larson was kind of bluffing with his original apology. He just wanted to get back into NASCAR. But then, hearing about some of the stuff that he did last year, as he was being reintroduced to the sport and he signed with Rick Hendrick, I found out, some of the stuff that he did was like he went out of his way in the past year to make up for this. So he went to Minneapolis in the wake of the George Floyd killing to learn more about racial injustice. He did all the stuff that NASCAR wanted him to do, and then he did more than what NASCAR wanted him to do. So it wasn't just about getting back into a ride. It was something that he genuinely cared about. And he requested, if you remember that Daytona 500 interview, he requested that, from what I've heard. He didn't, he wasn't required to do that interview. He requested the interview. I forget who was interviewing him, but he went out of his way to do that and try to explain to people how he's changed. And so, originally, I wanted to hate the guy. Like I said, I'm a Democrat, so I don't take racial injustice issues lightly. Not to say that I have particularly any experience with facing racial injustice, but, I believe that it's a critical issue. And so I didn't want to forgive him. But seeing all he's done in the past year, and seeing how he's tried to make up for it off the track, I know he was doing dirt racing last year, and he really wanted to get back into NASCAR, but he didn't just do what NASCAR asked of him, he did more than that. And, to go out of your way to learn about racial injustice, to learn about the very thing that, how do I say this? To learn about something that is the reason you got suspended, or at least is connected to the reason that you got suspended. I feel like that definitely shows that he has changed as a person. Odubel Herrera spent time in counseling. That's it. That's all that I've heard. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he didn't publicly donate to any women's shelters. He didn't act as a public advocate against something like domestic violence or or even sexual assault or harassment. So I have a hard time believing that he has changed as a person. And I did a bit of research before this, and I was trying to see if he did donate to anything like this, and I couldn't find anything. I tried multiple different Google searches, but I could not find anything about Odubel Herrera donating to anything. Just apologizing and going to counseling, but that's it. That's what the MLB asked of him. He didn't do anything more than that. He could have done more than that, but he didn't. And so that's why I don't forgive him. And if he's on the Phillies roster, I'm still going to have a hard time cheering for him if he winds up playing in a game or starting a game. And so I think it's going to be automatically it's going to be a mistake for the Phillies to sign this guy, or to not to sign him, but to give him a roster spot, because no one's going to buy his jersey still. Even though he's back, no one's going to buy his jersey because of what he did. So maybe he might help them get to the playoffs. He might have some sort of impact on the team. But you've got a lot of guys competing for that position, that center field position. I know Roman Quinn, Adam Hazley, even though he's out for a while. Mickey Moniak, who Phillies fans love right now. So I don't see a reason for the Phillies to keep him in the majors. They're going to, but I don't think they should. As if it was purely just based off of talent, say instead of committing an act of domestic violence in 2019, say that he, just got injured, like a Nick Robertson sort of situation. And then if he's like, production-wise, yes, I would think you would call him up. You would keep him on your roster. But I don't think that's going to be a good business decision for the Phillies in the long run. And so, like I said, also, Larson saying a racial slur is a whole different ballpark from being arrested for brutally beating your girlfriend. And I'm not saying that saying a racial slur is a good thing. I'm saying comparatively, actions speak louder than words. And Larson has changed, and it's obvious to anybody that's listened to what he's done that he's changed. And I would be really disappointed if something like that happened again with Kyle Larson, because that would obviously make me wrong. But judging from what I've seen from Kyle Larson, he's genuinely changed. From Odubel Herrera, I don't believe it. I believe that all he wants to do is get back to playing baseball. He doesn't care about the issue that is going to plague his career, the entire rest of his career, because, people, say the Phillies do make the playoffs and go on a playoff run, even if it's not this year, if it's in a future year, people are going to remember him as the guy that was suspended for beating up his girlfriend. That's going to be his legacy. Even if he wins a World Series, even if he wins 2 or 3, that's still going to be his legacy. So, I think he definitely needs to do more to show that he's changed. Not just counseling, not just apologizing. Anybody can do either of those things. But going out of your way to show that you've changed, that's what I think needs to happen. So, speaking out against, I know domestic violence and, particularly sexual harassment and assault, those are big issues in the media right now. Odubel Herrera could be taking a huge advantage of that and, speaking out against some of this stuff. And no, he would not be hypocritical. It would show that he's changed. If he spoke out against sexual assault or sexual harassment, or both, that would be great. I think a lot of people who are skeptical about him getting back in the majors, getting back on the Phillies roster, would love that. So whether or not he will do that, I don't know. I just hope he does. But I guess we'll see. Anyway, moving on now to another NASCAR subject, and actually particularly a Kyle Larson subject. And this also kind of ties into the last thing I was talking about, another big thing in the media right now is the recent violence against the AAPI community. The shooting down in Georgia is a big thing in the news. It was a big thing this past week, but this has been a big thing for the last couple of weeks now, at least. And so Kyle Larson, I believe, is the only member of the AAPI community who is in NASCAR right now. And so the question is, should Kyle Larson use his position to talk about the recent violence against the AAPI community? And so, again, I don't want to talk too much about social issues, but this is a pretty big part of his career. And I don't think it would, similarly to the Odubel Herrera situation, I don't think it'd be hypocritical at all for him to speak out against something like this. As I mentioned, he made himself a better person last year. But also, you saw last year, Bubba Wallace used his position to lead a charge against police brutality against the African American community, as NASCAR's only black driver last year. And so, I think, personally, it would be pretty powerful for Larson to speak out against AAPI violence. And, he might get slack from it from NASCAR fans, from the boomers that are against NASCAR being involved in social issues for whatever reason. But this matters, and I think that Larson should speak out against this violence. I wouldn't be mad at him if he didn't. Personally, I wouldn't be mad at him if he didn't, because it's kind of his choice. He can choose to represent the Asian community in NASCAR if he wants to. If he doesn't think he's ready for that platform after what happened last year, that also makes sense. But I would love to see him speak out against this. Not just as a Democrat and somebody that is obviously against all this violence happening, that's happened not just this year, but last year with the African American community. And also, violence against the AAPI community has actually been up in the past year, since the start of COVID, because racism, unfortunately, exists. So, I would love to see him speak out against this, but if he doesn't feel ready to speak out, that's his decision. But anyway, let's move on now to the thing that literally just happened before I started recording this. Noah Gragson. I hate the guy, so this is not going to be impartial. I've hated the guy since last year. I've hated the guy since Daytona last year, the first race at Daytona. Because he is the dirtiest NASCAR driver in recent memory. He makes Kyle Busch, who, we kind of criticize sometimes for being aggressive at the end of races. He makes Kyle Busch look like a nice guy. So should he be suspended from NASCAR for what he did today? For backing up into Daniel Hemrick. I didn't see the original incident when, I guess there was something original between that happened on the track with Hemrick doing something with Gragson. I don't know. But that was a really stupid retaliation. I mean, it pains me to see that this guy can't control his temper. And he drives for Dale Jr. If I'm Dale Jr., I am calling him after the race because this guy has been in so many wrecks in the past, year and then the first, what has it been, 5-6 races so far? He's been involved in so many wrecks. Most of them have been his fault. That I don't know how he still has a ride. He's racing in great equipment. He almost had a spot in the championship for last year until he got loose at Texas. But is it really worth it to keep this guy under contract? I mean, he cannot keep that car out of the wall. And the original incident today was not his fault. It was some mixture of AJ Allmendinger or Brett Moffitt's fault. I don't know exactly what Brett Moffitt was thinking. I don't know, if he saw AJ Allmendinger and decided to move up the track and didn't know that Brandon Jones was there. That was the first big incident that led to Gragson and Jones and Moffitt and a bunch of other guys. I think David Starr was in that incident too. All those guys wound up being in that wreck. That wasn't his fault. A lot of the wreck, and the speaking of it, the David Starr incident was also not his fault. That was David Starr. Not saying it was his fault, but it was the fact that he blew a tire. That's really on nobody, honestly. But you can tell, even after that race, or actually while it was going on, I think, after he got released from the infield care center, he dropped a curse word on TV. And you really can't do that. And I'm not going to cry about it. I don't care. I mean, I've heard way worse than what he said. But you got to control your temper in that situation. I think he might have gotten fined. He probably did get fined. Because NASCAR, like all major sports, definitely has a policy that you can't curse on TV. So he was probably fined for that. But this took it to a whole different level. I mean, not just talking about if you back into, if you remember that Kyle Busch and Sam Hornaday incident, Kyle Busch lost his temper in that Trucks race. And that's a major highlight. That is circulating. That's been circulating around the internet for probably about a decade now. I think that was Hornaday. I might be wrong. But even with that incident, that was on the track. That was retaliatory, but it happened on the track. And Kyle Busch was parked as a result. But he didn't endanger anybody by crashing Hornaday. If it's somebody else, if it's not Hornaday, I'm going to be so mad when looking this up afterwards. But he didn't endanger anybody. He didn't, he didn't intend to hurt Hornaday. He just wanted to put him in the wall and end his day. What Gragson did was he backed up, almost hit a couple of crew members, and we've had a fair share of crew members getting hurt in the past 2 seasons. I know there was one earlier this season where a crew member had to go to the hospital. I think it might have also been Xfinity Series. I know it was either Xfinity or Cup, where a crew member had to go to the hospital. I think after getting hit by another car, and there was one last year, I think was Ryan Blaney's crew member. But you cannot be doing that. You cannot back up into another driver on pit lane, on pit road. And I mean, like, he could have seriously hurt somebody. Not Hemrick. Hemrick was in the car. I mean, I don't know if it was on a jack or whatnot at that point, but he could have easily hurt a crew member, and he should have been parked at that point. I think that I don't know if, like, they will do this. They probably won't. I don't think that he should be able to take home 4th place for that race after that. I think he should be put in the back. Now, let me see about... Yeah, Xfinity Series hasn't said anything on Twitter about him being suspended or anything. It's going to take a bit. But I think at the end of the day, you have to suspend this guy. Without a doubt, you have to suspend him. This is unacceptable. And I don't, rubbing is racing. That's my motto. Rubbing is racing. Not my personal motto. I know that's not mine. But, when guys are bumping and banging, going to the start-finish line to win a race, even that Cole Custer Xfinity Series incident, I thought that was fine. You're competing for a win. If you're hitting guys on the last lap, if you're hitting guys with 2 laps to go, like late in a race, I'm fine with that. I don't care. That makes it interesting. What else are you going to do? You're just going to, like, sit back and let these guys go to the finish? I mean, the second Daytona race last year, but last year at Daytona, this is when I initially started to hate Gragson. When he wrecked the guy, I forget who it was, he wrecked somebody, and as a result, he won the race. And that's the first time that I started to dislike him. And I'm a Harrison Burton fan. So obviously I dislike him because of the fight last year. And I thought it was also cool that Harrison Burton went up to Daniel Hemrick after that incident today and kind of was like, yeah, I'm with you. He sucks. That guy, he doesn't know how to race. Not quite that long. Obviously, he, like, just elbowed him and, like, walked away, like, kind of like a sign of respect or whatever. But the Harrison Burton incident last year, that was a result of Gragson also getting into Burton. And then if you watch, a lot of people, for whatever reason, a lot of people think that Harrison Burton lost that fight because Gragson punched him. He actually missed. He actually wound up hitting him in the neck, in the back of the neck, so his fist went back here, and then he might have, like, gotten him on the way back, but then they went to the ground, and you didn't see that. But he missed with that punch, too, so he hasn't successfully landed a punch yet, this whiny little kid. I mean, he missed with the first punch against Daniel Hemrick. His crew guy stepped in and was, like, holding Hemrick so that Gragson could finally get a punch in. And I think when he did, he punched him in his own crew guy's arm. And then after that, he threw another punch and he missed again. So, NASCAR and WWE have a thing going all of a sudden. I don't think that Gragson is going to be somebody that is going to be involved at all with all the WWE stuff because this guy can't even land a simple punch. And in terms of what Hemrick did after the race, I think Hemrick shouldn't have even bothered to go up and talk to him. I think he should have just socked him in the face. And I said on Twitter, let me see if I can get this tweet up. A lot of people liked it, which I was kind of happy about. 33 people actually liked it. I said he's gonna get his jaw shattered if he keeps racing like that. Suspend him. Or suspend Gragson, I said. But at this point, he might. If he gets into enough fights, I mean, someone's eventually gonna go up to him. They're not even gonna bother talking to him. And if he races like this in the Cup Series, that, like, you're not just racing for a ride in the Cup Series, you're racing for a championship. The Xfinity guys, they don't really care so much if they win a championship. They just want to get called up. They just want to go to the Cup Series. But when you're in the Cup Series, You want to win a championship. And so if he ever gets called up to the Cup Series and starts racing like that, I mean, he's going to get a lot worse than, Daniel Hemrick going up to him and shoving him, or Harrison Burton going up and pushing him. I mean, he's gonna get his jaw obliterated if he goes up to the Cup Series full time and starts racing like that against guys. And remember that if you remember the I think it was a Bristol race last year, Chase Elliott got loose in turn 2, I think, and he slid up the track a little bit, and then he dove down into turn 3, and then he got really loose, and he came up and hit Logano, and then afterward they had like a talk. If you're Gragson, and say Gragson is Elliott, I mean, he does that on a consistent basis. So, a guy like Logano is not going to be nice to him if that happens in Cup Series. I mean, he is going to get in some serious trouble. Especially if he can't land a simple punch. I mean, seriously, dude. Anyway, let's move on now. The Sixers are actually on while I'm talking about this. But the Sixers, after the game the other night, is it time for them to trade for Kyle Lowry? I don't know how this is possible, but right now the Sixers are up 20-10. Without Embiid, without Simmons, without Curry, Danny Green and Tobias Harris are the only starters that are, or the only consistent starters that are in this lineup. Somehow Danny Green is 3 for 3 with 3-pointers. Shooting 100% right now. And I talked about this the other day. I talked about, the two guys that stepped up and actually played the other night for the Sixers were the two guys that we have been screaming about all year. Danny Green and Furkan Korkmaz. And, Tobias showed up. He had a few points. Seth Curry had a few points. He has a left ankle sprain now, though, so that's not going to do him any good for the next couple of games. Simmons had a few points, but he was pretty bad for most of that game. Green and Korkmaz were the only guys that showed up. So who do you trade for him now? And after the recent games, I'm also reluctant to trade Seth Curry as well because he's been, after he had COVID and he went on that really bad streak, he had a couple of good nights in a row, and then he's been inconsistent since then. But, in the last few games that he's played, he's been pretty good. So I'm reluctant to trade him right now. But I also don't want them to give up Thibault. And I feel like the Raptors are going to want one of them. And I don't think, as the Sixers, you're in a position that you could make that trade. Now, Lonzo Ball apparently entered the mix in the guys that the Sixers are thinking about trading for. He's averaging 14 points per game. And, he's been probably more consistent than Lowry. He had one 3-point night against Cleveland in 25 minutes of play on March 12th. But aside from that, 15 points on March 18th, 11 on the 16th, 20 against the Clippers. He had 23 against the Jazz on March 1st. I don't know who you give up for him, though, either. He's averaging 14 points per game, like I said. That's like his career high. If you trade for him, you better not be giving up too much. I think Maxey is definitely somebody that they might be willing to give up. I I don't think they should necessarily, but if the attitude is to win now or win never, then, I wouldn't be too sad to see Maxey go and then wind up starting for New Orleans or some other team in a couple of years and averaging like 30 points a night, while the Sixers are whatever rebuilding at that point. I don't think personally that they should make a trade. I think that, you just, against the Milwaukee Bucks, they had a good game against Milwaukee. I'll admit that. For what they had a good game against Milwaukee. I didn't like the way they lost. I was upset that they only gave up 31 points in a half, and they were up 19 in the second half, and then blew that lead. But they lost in overtime to the third seed in the East without Embiid on a back-to-back. Like, that's pretty impressive. If you just look at that game, if you don't think about how they lost, you just look at that game and the final score, that's impressive. And so I've come to the conclusion that the Sixers, despite being the first seed in the East, and I think being second in the power rankings, the Sixers are underrated. I'm not being sarcastic about that. Because if you can take the third seed in the East to overtime without your star player who was well on track to becoming MVP, and you were playing a back-to-back that night, like, that's pretty incredible. And so, I think what you need to do if you're the Sixers is you need to keep this current team and, maybe make a few trades for, like, if you want to upgrade the bench. I mean, if you want to trade Maxey for a veteran bench player, go for it. If you want to trade some of these prospects in exchange for a veteran who could be maybe a 9th or 10th man, that might be a better trade than trying to get a shooting guard, or trying to get any guard before the trade deadline. So I think what they need to do, I think if they lose tonight's game, which the way they're playing right now, it might not happen. I think that they're going to win this game. I mean, they could still choke, but like they came out strong. It's 31-14 now. Danny Green now has 11 points. Tobias has 10. They haven't gone with anybody other than their starters yet. Mike Scott actually just checked into the game for the first time. Who's another guy? I think you could trade Mike Scott if you wanted to. I think they should try to upgrade the bench, just in case you need to rely on depth a little bit in the playoffs. I mean, Embiid has been out for a few games this season with back soreness. He's out for at least a couple of weeks now with that knee injury, that bruise, or whatever that official injury is called. So I think the Sixers should win the next 2 of 3 before the trade deadline. And the only game I think it would be acceptable for them to lose is the game against Golden State. You never know what's going to happen with Seth Curry's brother. If he decides to drop 70 against them, then there's really nothing you can do about that. Especially if Seth is supposed to be guarding Steph, or was supposed to be guarding Steph. I don't know when Seth is going to be back in the lineup. It's probably going to be... I've sprained my ankle before. It usually takes about a week to heal. And then even then, it could wind up being more than that. So I don't think Seth is going to be active for any of the next games. So they're going to have to start Shake Milton and hope for the best. And Shake Milton right now has 4 points. He's attempted 2 free throws. He has an assist. He's only played... I mean, the game's still in the first quarter, but He's 1 for 5 though. That's the problem. I mean, and this is what I mean when I say on Twitter that, it's insane how these guys just are killing it, and then they get injured, and when they come back from injury and they suck, or they, in the case of Seth Curry, he had COVID and he came back, and then he stunk for a while. But with Shake Milton, he was awesome, and then he got injured, and now he's been terrible. And so it makes me worried to see what Embiid's gonna be like when he gets back. Because, I mean, that's an even longer injury. He's going to be out for at least, another week and a half, I think. But yeah, I think it's inevitable that the Sixers are eventually going to drop out of first place. The thing that they have to concentrate on is maintaining second. Don't let the Bucks catch up to you. Please don't let the Heat catch up to you. That would kill every Philly sports fan inside. If you're not confident that you can do that without another piece, then I guess trade. But if you are confident that you can maintain second, and that should be the idea, what ownership is thinking of. That shouldn't be what the players are thinking of at all. I mean, the players obviously want first, but the owners should be thinking, and Daryl Morey should be thinking, is this a team capable of being second in the East, of finishing the season second in the East? And, they just almost beat the third team in the East in overtime without their best player in a back-to-back. And so after the Milwaukee game, I am personally confident that the Sixers can remain in second. And the Nets lost last night, by the way, so no matter what happens in this game, the Sixers are still in first for the next couple of days or so, or at least until tomorrow. I mean, we'll see about. If they win, then they will remain in first through tomorrow, because the Nets don't play tonight. And the Sixers tomorrow night, I know they have another back-to-back because the NBA hates us. Sixers play the Knicks. I hope they can beat the Knicks. I guess we'll see. The Nets are playing the Wizards. I guess you really can't. I was going to say that the Nets, that should be their game, but the Wizards just beat the Jazz the other night, so I really don't know. I mean, hopefully the Wizards can win. I'm not, entirely optimistic, but I'm not going to, write off that game. And, I try to stay pretty reasonable. With the Nets, even when they were playing the Pacers, and the Pacers almost won, I was like, oh. Before the game, I was thinking, oh, it doesn't matter. It's the Nets. They're going to win. Who cares? Life is pointless. The Sixers are going to lose first in the East. But then the Pacers almost won. And then the Magic somehow won last night. Aaron Gordon, 38 points. That was crazy. So congrats to the Magic. And thank you. Thank you, Magic. Thank you. Because that's huge for us. Now we don't have to worry tonight about losing first place in the East with a loss. But anyway, let's move on to the final topic. This is going to be the longest podcast that I've done so far. Who will win the Bristol Trucks race in NASCAR? This is the only reason I'm talking about this is because it's basically a Cup Series race. I mean, so many guys are going to be racing in this. Ryan Newman is racing in it. Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson, Chase Briscoe, Martin Truex Jr., Bubba Wallace. So pretty much half of the decent drivers in NASCAR. And then, some of the Tier 2 drivers in NASCAR as well. I'm surprised Kyle Busch isn't racing in this one. I mean, this would be the only thing that I would, not have a problem with him racing in other than the Cup Series. So I would be genuinely surprised if anybody other than a Cup Series driver won this race. I don't think John Hunter Nemechek is going to win this race. I don't think Austin Hill is going to win this race. I mean, these guys are pretty young. They're going against some of the best Cup Series drivers out there. And then even some of the guys that were great in trucks and as a result made their way up to the Cup Series. I mean, Bubba Wallace was a monster in the Truck Series. So here's my prediction. Let's go back to what I was talking about earlier. I think Kyle Larson is going to win this race. I love talking about him in this podcast, I guess. But here's why. He did a lot of dirt racing last year. No one else really raced on dirt last year who was in the Cup Series. So Kyle Larson, in my eyes, is the most experienced driver who has raced trucks more recently than any of the other drivers that are involved. And he won at Eldora in 2016, came in second in 2014. He also won a Cup Series race earlier this season. He could wind up, in my eyes, honestly, winning both the Trucks race and the Cup Series race. I mean, wouldn't that be funny? It would be so boring, but it would be funny if he wound up winning both the Trucks and Cup Series by like 10 seconds both on each. It could happen, I guess. I think he's going to win the Trucks race. Obviously, Cup Series is a lot more competitive. We'll have to see about that. But I think my prediction is going to be that that Kyle Larson wins the truck race. So anyway, that is going to be it for this podcast. We're currently going on 47 minutes right now. Let me check the Sixers score one more time. 42-21 at the end of the first quarter. My goodness. So I was wrong. I thought this was going to be a total trap game. Although I guess it's not a trap game if you don't have high expectations to win. But they're currently destroying Sacramento, so that's good. Hopefully they don't blow that lead. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I forgot to write a close to give you all the links and stuff. So definitely follow this page on social media. Those links will be in the description. The tag is @FairweatherFan. Fan spelled the same way as it is in the link to the podcast, whether you're viewing this on YouTube or listening to it on Spotify. Fairweather, PHAN. And then the website is fairweatherfan.weebly.com. Also spelled the same way. So yeah, go Sixers. Thanks for listening, y'all. And I hope to see you next time on the Fairweather Fan Podcast.